What's up, everybody? Booty Noodles here, and today is a very exciting day because we have solved the Dragorath Claw build, the ultimate Rune Master everything explodes build. It looks amazing, it feels amazing. We are casting Elemental Novas, Lightning Blasts, and Frostclaws all at the same time. We're not running out of mana, and we are generating absolutely absurd amounts of ward. This is easily the most fun Rune Master build I have ever played, and I've played a lot of them, so enjoy the gameplay, and then we'll jump into how you too can be this amazing. Alrighty, so the most important part of this, obviously, is knowing which gear you need in order to be able to do this build. And there are a number of things that are just absolutely essential for this build to work. The first one is obviously a Dragorath Claw. Ideally, you have both prefixes on it. You're going to need tier 7 cast speed. That is absolutely essential for this build to feel good. And then tier 5 crit multiplier as the other prefix is also extremely important. The second thing that you need to have is a fragment of the Enigma. Again, tier 7 on cast speed is going to make a huge difference in making this build feel good. And then the third thing that you definitely need is you need to have at least a total of +6 levels to Frostclaw. Now, there's a number of ways that you can get them. You can get them from your relic. This is the place you can get the most. You can get them from your chest piece. You get one from the fragment of the Enigma, and then alternatively, you could also, if you want, get one from an Omni, but you'd lose some other stats if you did that. And then the last thing that you need also is you need to have at least 20 mana regen, but ideally 21 or 22 to make sure that you really are never running out of mana. So, if you do not have all of those things, I would not recommend trying this build. It is definitely very endgame focused. This is not a starter build. This is not something you can switch into until you're, level 95 to 100 and have, mostly exalted and legendary gear. So this is definitely something that you're going to want to be saving up for and then switching over to. If you want something that's a starter build, I would recommend Ali's starter build that also uses Dragorath Claw. It's not, it's not quite as flashy as this, but it's a great starter build. I'll link that in description, as well as my Fireclaw Ignite build that is also extremely strong. And I'll be uploading a new video on that in the coming days as well. So with that, let us jump into the skills and how it works. So the key to this build is Frostclaw. Everything that's happening in this build starts from us casting Frostclaw. And if you haven't seen my Frostclaw mana juggling video, I would highly recommend you watch it. But one of the key elements of this is us spending mana, and we're spending a lot of mana. It costs 21 mana on cast, but we're gaining a bunch of mana back from this Gift of Winter node. So having this node as well as all of these nodes in the bottom left here that create extra casts is how we are balancing most of our mana costs for Frostclaw. We're converting it to lightning. We're getting a bunch of extra projectiles that all can hit separately. And then additionally, we have a 28% chance to cast Elemental Nova for each of the 6 separate casts. So if you watch me cast this skill, you can see, Elemental Novas will randomly explode at various points from, different casts of the Frostclaw. Additionally, because we have Dragorath Claw, anytime that the Frostclaw crits, we have a 39% chance to cast Lightning Blast. And since each cast of Frostclaw has 5 projectiles, and it bounces so many times, you are guaranteed to pretty much cast all 3 of those every single second. You can see as I'm hitting this target, you can see the lightning blasts are coming straight from me and hitting the target. Even just one cast of Frostclaw generates 2 to 3 lightning blasts. And so with the Dragorath Claw, you are capped at 3 casts per second. So even if this was min-rolled at 37% chance to cast Lightning Blast, I would still be extremely overcapped. So when you're buying your Dragorath Claw, do not worry about that stat. And so that is how we are doing it. We are casting Frostclaw. It is casting Lightning Blast, and Frostclaw is also proccing Elemental Novas everywhere, and we are doing a whole lot of damage. Now, another very interesting part about this build is that because we can spec into Lightning Blast, we get our free Lightning Aegis from this, which is a very great defensive skill. But additionally, we have this closed circuit node, which I don't think a lot of people realize how powerful it is. But this is one of the most core parts of this build, because as you can see, right now, my flat spell critical strike chance, or my spell critical strike chance, is 70%, and my increased lightning damage is 267%. But every time that lightning blast chains back to me, it gives me 15% increased damage and 40% increased crit chance, right? So if I am sitting here and I am spamming Frostclaw on, let's say, this target right here, right? We can see that I am overcapping my crit chance, and I am getting a huge amount of increased lightning damage. And so this increases your DPS on bosses by a lot. Like the single target damage for this is definitely stronger than the single target damage is for my Spark Charge Artillery build, despite how similar they are. So that is an extremely key part of this build, is this closed circuit node. Finally, the one thing that we do have to do that is very important is balance the mana cost of also casting Lightning Blast. The Frostclaw, for the most part, pays for itself with the Gift of Winter node, but with Lightning Blast, we have a mana cost of 6 mana cost every time we cast it, and we are casting it 3 times every second. So from somewhere, we need to be getting at least 18 mana a second back, or we're going to slowly potentially run out of mana. So that is why you need to have your mana regeneration around 20 or 21. In my opinion, 21 feels the best, but you can experiment and see what works for you. So that is how the build works. And from here, I'll dive a little bit more into, each of the skills specifically, and then we can go into the passives and the gear. So we talked about Frostclaw a fair bit already, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more in depth here. So Frostclaw, obviously, Gift of Winter is very important to reduce mana cost and get the mana back, as well as Frozen Rain for the additional decreased mana cost. We come down here and we take all of the extra bounces. And one thing you'll notice that we're doing differently from my Spark Charge Artillery build is we are not taking the second cast aimed that adds +3 mana cost. This is extremely important to not take, because otherwise we are completely unable to afford this build mana-wise if we take this node. Obviously, we get the sacrifice of our clear goes down a little bit because all of the extra bounces aren't kind of aimed and hitting random mobs that are around. But just the huge AoE that we're getting from our Elemental Novas for the most part makes up for it. And so that clear doesn't feel bad even though we aren't taking this node. Then we're coming up here and we're taking, obviously we're converting it to lightning, and we're taking as much mana efficiency as we can get. Obviously the projectile speed is nice here. And then we come over and we get some points into Elemental Nova chance, because that is how we're proccing the Elemental Novas. Now, if you don't have 26 and you have, only 25 points, then you need to take 1 point out of Elemental Nova. We really can't sacrifice any mana efficiency here. We are already on the edge as it is. The next skill that we'll look at is our Lightning Blast. Lightning Blast, we want to get all the nodes we can here in the Spark Charge side of things. So chance to apply Spark Charge on hit. We're casting it 3 times a second, so we have a pretty much close to 100% chance. Actually, it's a little bit over 100% chance because we get an extra 10% from our fragment of the Enigma. So our Lightning Blasts are casting, applying at least 1 Spark Charge every second on average. They're detonating any existing spark charges, and the spark charges that it do apply deal a lot more damage. Then we are coming here and we're getting our Lightning Aegis. This is great defensive skill for us. And then we're coming here and we need at least 1 point in this node. Now this is important because we have no other place to get Lightning Blast chains with this version of the build. You see, when we cast Lightning Blast from the Dragorath dagger, we do not get the benefits from this node because this node only benefits you when you are directly casting it. So the only reason we're taking 2 points in this node is so we can get to this node, which gives us that infinitely stacking crit chance and increased damage granted. And then from here, all the extra points that we have, we're just coming down here to get some extra ward generation. This gives us 2 ward per mana spent. We're spending 18 a second, so this is giving us 36 ward per second, as well as an additional 6 on top. So this is like about 40 ward per second that we're getting from this. There's nowhere else really to put these nodes or to put these points. So if you want to try something else, put them somewhere else, you're welcome to. Thirdly, we'll take a look at Elemental Nova. Again, Elemental Nova, we're not doing damage with the hits of Elemental Nova. The only purpose of Elemental Nova is to apply spark charges in as big an area as possible. And so in the lightning side, we're getting we're capping our spark charge chance. We're getting a little bit of increased area. And then in the ice side, we're coming and we're reducing the mana cost to 0. This is very important because if it started costing mana, then we'd start having mana issues. Finally, we're coming down here and we are taking Infernal Nova. And we get all the benefits from this node and none of the downsides from this node because we are not manually casting Elemental Nova. We are having it be procced from our Frostclaw. So even though it adds a 4-second cooldown to Elemental Nova, we completely bypass that, but we still get that 250% increased area. So that feels amazing. And I have also taken a bunch of extra Ignite chance here, which I will dive into now when I talk about the Flame Rush skill. So for Flame Rush, this is pretty straightforward. The reason why I have Ignite chance on my Elemental Nova as well as some on my gear is because I'm taking this node, Fire Eater, which can actually help quite a bit with our ward generation as we're mapping or killing bosses. As it stands now, I have a little bit under 100%, maybe I have 60 or 70% chance to ignite on hit. And so on bosses, I can get, over 200 stacks of ignite at a single time. And when I consume them all with this node, it generates a fairly significant amount of extra ward for me. So this is just a kind of nice defensive bonus. Other than that, we're coming and we're taking Frenzy. This is great. 20% extra cast speed is very valuable for this build. Mana efficiency and cooldown recovery speed. This is even better if you can get a lot of extra fire resist because it doubles the effect. Decreased damage taken and increasing that buff. Very important for survivability. And then we're coming over here and we are converting it to cold. And this is important for our Runic Invocation. Because with our Runic Invocation, this is a great defensive skill. We are using the Cold Fire Cold Invocation, which gives us 30% less damage taken, as well as a good amount of ward generation that scales with our intelligence, and we have a lot of intelligence. Right now, my intelligence is 170 with all of this gear, and this grants initially 100 plus 3 ward per intelligence. So every time this is cast, I'm automatically getting almost 500 ward, maybe more. And then additionally, it gives me every 0.4 seconds, it gives me 14 plus 0.5 per intelligence. So every 0.4 seconds, or let's just say it's like 0.5, and then multiplying that by 2, I'm getting around 300 ward per second from this as well. So Runic Invocation is very important. And then the reason I converted my Flame Rush to Cold is because of the immutable order node, which means that the order of the runes above your head does not matter what skills you cast in their element. It matters what order they are on your bar. So in my case, I have Flame Rush converted to Cold. I have Flame Ward, which is fire, and then I have Snap Freeze, which is cold. And one thing to note is that Runic Invocation will skip over itself on its bar when it's kind of looking at the cold, fire, cold, or whatever element the skills are, as well as any skills that do not have an element tag. So for example, if you had teleport, it would skip over that as well. So after that, we're taking this node, we're taking as much cooldown recovery speed as we can. We're taking this extra cast speed and spell damage buff. This is, a nice little buff. And then over here, we are taking these nodes, which give us a chance to double cast. And then some new tech here that I realize is that this is actually an extremely strong node, and pretty much guarantees that every time we do cast Runic Invocation, we're double casting it and getting double all of those ward generation buffs, because we are spending a lot of mana. This gives us 10 per 10 mana we spend. It gives us one runic energy. So if you can see right here, this is my runic energy. If I cast it, you can see how fast I am generating and getting to this cap. It is much faster than the actual cooldown of Runic Invocation. So every time that I cast Runic Invocation, it is guaranteed to be double cast if I am just sitting here spamming Frostclaw. So that is an extremely strong defensive skill. And with that is all the skills. We will now jump into looking at the passives. Now, the passives for this build are fairly similar to the Spark Charge Artillery build, with just a couple notable changes that I'll go into, but we'll start from the base. Very basic. This is, pretty standard mage passive. We max our intelligence. We take 2 points here that lets us get over here. We max out the cast speed, and we take 5 points into this, mainly for the, this is great for crit chance and crit multi. And then with 20 points in mage, we're now able to get, points in the other trees. In the Rune Master, we are taking, all this extra cast speed is super important and very valuable. We don't get anything from the 5-point bonus. We're really just taking this for the cast speed, and the mana can be nice as well. Here, intelligence and ward on cast. This is a great ward generator, and intelligence is obviously extremely important for this build. And likewise with this is great defensive buff as well as the intelligence. This skill is very great because, or this passive is great because Frostclaw does have an area tag, and so we are generating, we're generating runes above our head extremely fast. We almost always have 3 above our head. So every time that we cast Frostclaw, we're generating 24 times 3 ward, which is 72 ward every single cast. Then down here, we're taking this for the mana regen. Again, as I pointed out, it's very important to have around 20 plus mana regen for this build, and this is one of the places that we're getting it. We have plenty of intelligence, so this 12 mana regen is actually doubled, and this is giving us 24% increased mana regen. Here is some extra crit chance and the Rune Word Cataclysm. These points are great mainly just because they can give you a little extra cast speed and move speed after you use a traversal skill. Right here, we're taking points here for the extra mana regen as well. We unfortunately don't really get the 5-point bonus since we don't have a Gone rune, which is the lightning rune above our head. We're using Cold, Fire, Cold. But this extra 12% is still valuable. This is one of the most important nodes. It gives us not only intelligence, but lots of cooldown recovery speed, which makes the cooldown for our Runic Invocation and movement skills very low. We have permanent uptime on our Runic Invocation because of how low its cooldown is. This node is extremely important because it allows us to apply Brand of Deception, which enables this node, which generates, this is how we generate absurd amounts of ward when we're killing bosses, because we are hitting a lot of times, and every single time we hit, we generate 28 ward. Rune Word Hurricane is nice for the extra 10 spell lightning damage. And then this node is great because not only do we gain ward on crit, we're critting a whole lot of times, but also an extra crit multi. Pretty much we're fully capping this every time. So we get 20% crit multi extra against bosses. Finally, in the sorcerer tree, we are taking Arcane Momentum and Essence of Celerity. Actually, I would recommend, I can do this right now. We don't need, you can only, as long as you have the 6-point bonus in this, you're fine. So I have to take points from somewhere else real quick. So I'm going to put 7 points in this, and then take 2 points out of this. Because you only really care about the 6-point bonus. The increased spell damage is not as strong as the extra intelligence that you're getting from this node. Put them back here. And then finally, you are taking 2 in here and then 3 in here, this lightning penetration and lightning leech. The lightning leech is the most important bit. Obviously, the lightning penetration does increase your damage. The leech is what enables us to regenerate health from the health that we are spending with our Twisted Heart. So as you can see, even though I'm spending a lot of health, I am almost completely health capped because of the amount I am leeching. Realistically, you could get away with even less points in this node. Like you could probably just have 1 point in lightning each and you would just be fine. But obviously the lightning penetration is still a valuable stat as well. And those are all the information you need about the skills. Finally, we will take a look at the gear. Obviously, Dragorath's Claw is a very important part of this build. The only stats that you really care about on the Dragorath's Claw are the flat crit chance in the implicit. It can roll 3 or 4. You definitely want to be able to get that to be a 4. And then obviously spell crit multiplier is valuable, and all resistances are also valuable, and ward gained on crit is another valuable ward generator. So it's nice to have those as high as they can be. But the most important thing really is that flat crit chance on the implicit. And then we spoke about this earlier, but getting cast speed as your tier 7 stat is definitely the most important. And if you do get a 4 LP one, getting chance to ignite on hit would probably be the most valuable, just because of the little flame rush tech that you can do to generate some extra ward from your ignite stacks. Your Fragment of the Enigma is pretty much the same as my Spark Charge Artillery build. Again, tier 7 cast speed is going to be the most important stat you can get on it, with crit multiplier as the second one, and there aren't really any important suffixes, so if you do have more than 2 LP, getting any type of resistance or defensive stat is just fine. For your helmet, we're running a Bone Clamor. We don't need to run a Prismatic Gaze because we have flat critical strike chance on Dragorath's Claw, and a Bone Clamor can give us a lot more intelligence than we can get on a Prismatic Gaze, because it has 10 already up to 13 on the unique, and then you can slam tier 7 on it. So this helmet is giving me 25 intelligence. In addition, it gives you, some extra ward per second, which is nice for ward generation, although it is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the amount we're generating everywhere else. For our amulet, cast speed, I would 100% recommend that you get a cast speed node here. You are severely lacking on the cast speed in this build compared to the Mad Alchemist Ladle because our intelligence does not scale our cast speed. So getting cast speed anywhere you can is important. And then, again, I have tier 7 mana regen on this amulet. It is important to make sure you have your mana regen over 20 for this build to feel good and you not to run out of mana. But then crit multiplier, armor shred, and ignite on hit are all fairly, I've talked about all of those. For our chest armor, we are doing an unstable core. There's 2 different chest armors you could theoretically use for this build. You could use a static shell if you wanted. Obviously, you would lose that extra point to Frostclaw, so you'd want to make that up by wearing an Omni. If you don't have this chest piece. But apart from that, it is important to have as much intelligence as you can. So getting tier 7 intelligence on it is important. For this build, though, keep in mind that this chest does also give you increased mana regen, which does contribute. So if you went with a static shell, you would need to get more mana regen somewhere else, probably on one of your rings or your belt. For the rings, I have a mana regen base, tier 7 intelligence, lightning damage, and then the suffixes, whatever resistances you can get. And then I also sealed mana regeneration on it. Another stat, like the three prefixes that really matter on your rings, tier 7 intelligence, and then either lightning damage, mana regeneration, or critical strike chance are all great. My other ring is a crit base ring that I was using for my Spark Charge Artillery build. I think, in an ideal world, I get another one similar to this, get a little bit more mana regen since I don't need that critical strike chance as much anymore, since I am just overcapping myself with the Lightning Blast passive node. For the belt, I would not recommend using this belt that I'm wearing now. I would just recommend using a belt that has lightning damage or mana regen on it. This belt I just like because it lets me move around the map really fast with the traversal skill cooldown recovery. But realistically, running something like this with a bunch of defenses and increased lightning damage, or cooldown recovery speed, getting mana regeneration on it can also be really valuable. For the gloves, the best in slot is going to be Swaddling of the Erased with tier 7 intelligence and then any other stats you can get on it. If you cannot get a Swaddling of the Erased with tier 7 intelligence, I would recommend just a normal pair of gloves like this with either a critical strike chance or a mana regen base with tier 7 intelligence and cast speed as the prefixes. For your boots, I'm using a legendary Blood of the Exile. The only reason I'm using this Blood of the Exile is because they also have a base of 11 intelligence on them, and then I slammed the tier 7 intelligence. So these are giving me a total of 25 intelligence, which is very strong. I would not use the Blood of the Exile unless you can get the tier 7 intelligence on them. Otherwise, I just use Exalted Boots with tier 7 intelligence. And then finally, the Twisted Heart. This is definitely important for this build. We generate a lot of ward from it. It gives us cast speed, and the plus levels to Frostclaw are extremely important for this build. Finally, we can talk about the idols. Mana efficiency with Frostclaw is again very important. So I have 2 of those. This one is obviously not great because the suffix is pretty useless for this build, but the most important part is really the mana efficiency. We are taking increased lightning critical strike chance and increased armor and mana. You could potentially remove this increased crit chance for a different prefix if there was something else you thought would be valuable. But for now, these are just fine for me. And then these idols, I am taking chance to ignite for a little bit of extra ward generation from the Flame Rush node. And then you can fill in whatever resistances you need with any of these extra slots. The last thing we'll chat about quickly is how to actually play this build. It plays almost identically to the Spark Charge Artillery build. You're pretty much just holding down your right click to spam your Frostclaw. I have my Flame Rush bound to my Q. That's how I'm moving around. And then normally you can either numb lock it. I just hold it down. I just hold down the W key. It casts every time it's up. And that is it. Move around with Q. You spam Frostclaw. And you perma-cast your Runic Invocation whenever it's up. I don't even use Flame Ward. I just have it on my bar to give me a fire skill for my Runic Invocation, and I use Snap Freeze occasionally on bosses just to freeze them, to cancel their abilities or, save myself from something that might hurt me. So that is it, and with that, I think that is pretty much everything you need to know about this build. Overall, it is definitely an expensive build to gear into. I believe it is a bit stronger than my Spark Charge artillery build that I posted last week and 2 weeks ago. Mind you, I think the Spark Charge artillery build can potentially scale harder than this one if you manage to get some of like extremely best in slot gear, like red rings with LP and intelligence on them. But that really isn't realistic for most people. So I think that this gear, this build, while it might not cap as high, is probably stronger for the amount of investment I have to put into it relative to the other one. So I hope you all have fun with this build. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Join my Discord. I'm happy to answer questions in there. Join my live streams. I like to help out any of the viewers I can on live streams. If you have legendary slams to do, I like to bring them up on the stream so the whole stream can watch you gamble them. I think it's a fun little thing to do. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you around.